The ship shook, hard metal groaned, lights blinked, alarms screamed. Captain Yeltar, a tall silver-scaled alien, gripped the control panel as his claws dug deep into the metal. Outside the ship's thick glass, a sea of white clouds spun. Fast, the ship was falling. Brace for impact. He yelled in his native tongue. The alien crew screamed and held on to whatever they could. But one person didn't panic. The human Mark just strapped himself into his seat, calm, silent. A loud boom echoed as the ship crashed into a frozen planet, sliding across the icy surface like a broken blade. Then ... silence. Inside, the lights flickered. Steam hissed from broken pipes. One by one, the crew moaned and opened their eyes. The cold hit them immediately. Yeltar gasped. His breath turned to mist. His blood ran cold, literally. Their species weren't made for this. The air was dry, sharp, freezing. One alien dropped to the floor, skin turning pale blue. "We need heat, now," shouted the medic. But Mark, the only human on the ship, stood up slowly. He pulled on a thick jacket, zipped it to his neck, and walked toward the door like nothing happened. "Wait, are you mad?" Yeltar asked. "You'll freeze out there." Mark paused, gave a little smirk, and said in plain words, "I grew up in Michigan." The aliens didn't understand what Michigan meant. But when the door opened, and the wind screamed inside like a monster, they saw him walk into the storm without fear. Snow hit his face. His beard froze slightly, but his steps were strong. He moved like this was normal. Like this wasn't death. Outside, inside the ship, the temperature dropped fast. The aliens wrapped themselves in emergency foil, but it wasn't enough. Fingers turned stiff. Eyes became red. Minutes passed. Then the ship's door opened again. Mark walked back in, dragging pieces of broken metal, wires, and what looked like old heating coils from the wreckage. His cheeks were red, but he was smiling. "I found a heat core," he said. "Give me 15 minutes. No one spoke. They just stared. How did he survive out there? Mark knelt beside the wall and started connecting wires, blowing warm air onto the coils to keep them from cracking. The aliens watched, shivering. His hands moved fast, sure, like he'd done this before. "You're not cold?" one alien whispered. "Cold?" Mark said, not looking up. "This is just a bit chilly." The heating unit sparked. A red light blinked. Then warm air poured from the vents. The aliens sighed in relief. Color slowly returned to their skin. Captain Yeltar walked over and sat beside Mark. His voice was quiet. "This kind of cold, it would kill our kind in 10 minutes. But you were out there for over 20. Mark shrugged. "I've camped in worse." "Your species, you're not like us," Yeltar said. "You shouldn't be alive," Mark laughed. "Maybe we're just stubborn." The crew didn't know what to say. They looked at the human in a new way. He wasn't just their engineer anymore. He was their lifeline. Later that night, as the storm raged outside and the ship groaned from the weight of ice building on its hull, the aliens huddled together in the corner, wrapped in blankets. Mark sat near the fire he'd made from wreckage, calmly sipping water warmed in a can. His face was lit by the flames, eyes relaxed, like he was on a camping trip. "Back on Earth," he said softly, "we have places colder than this. Places where water turns to ice before it hits the ground." Yeltar blinked slowly. "And your kind live there?" "Not just live," Mark smiled. "We build cities there. We work there. We play there." The alien said nothing. They had never heard of such madness. They had never imagined a species that didn't fear weather but adapted to it. That night, as the crew slept, Yeltar stayed awake, staring at Mark's sleeping figure near the fire. The human skin should have been frostbitten. His organs should have failed. But there he was, snoring softly, like he was in his own bed. Yeltar made a silent note in his log. Day 1. We crashed on an uncharted frozen world. The human showed no fear. He walked into death and returned with life. The cold does not scare him. I must understand why, before it's too late. The second planet they landed on was nothing like the ice world. It was hot. Too hot. The sun hovered like a burning god above the orange skies. The ground shimmered with heat waves, and even machines melted if left outside too long. Captain Yeltar adjusted his heat visor and looked out the cracked window of the temporary shelter. He watched the horizon carefully. A red cloud moved toward them fast. Is that? The medic asked, already sweating under her armor. Yes, Yeltar replied. A firestorm. The red cloud wasn't just heat, it was wind mixed with burning sand, ash, and toxic chemicals. On this world, a firestorm didn't destroy buildings, it peeled skin. The aliens scrambled into the shelter and slammed the door shut. The outside temperature rose so fast that even the walls of the shelter groaned under the pressure. All were inside, except one. Mark, where's the human? Someone shouted. Everyone turned toward the airlock. Yeltar rushed over and opened the small viewing screen, and there he was. Mark stood outside wearing only a heat-resistant jacket, tightening a panel on one of the communication towers. His face was covered with a scarf, but he moved with calm hands focused. He's going to die, one crew member shouted. Bring him in. No, Yeltar whispered, eyes wide. Wait, watch him. The storm hit. The winds howled like beasts. Sand tore across the landscape. Red lightning cracked through the air, and the tower bent under pressure. Mark didn't move. He crouched low, wrapped the wires, locked the panel, and gave the tower a strong slap. Then, calmly, he walked back toward the shelter. The door slid open, and the heat blasted in. Mark stepped inside, brushed sand off his shoulders, and pulled down his scarf. His face was red but unburned. You fixed it? Yeltar asked. Yep, Mark said, wiping sweat from his brow. Signal's good now. One of the aliens scanned him with a handheld device. Their eyes grew wide. No burns, no cellular damage, no heat rash. Not even elevated stress hormones. But how? Another whispered. Mark took a drink from his flask. I've been in heat worse than this. One time my Jeep broke down. In Death Valley, 140 Fahrenheit. No storm shelter. Just me in the sun for 8 hours. Death Valley? Yeltar repeated. Mark chuckled. It's on Earth, and yes, it earns the name. The aliens looked at him like he was a ghost. This was the second time Mark had survived what should have been fatal. First the cold, now the heat. It made no sense. Their species had evolved over thousands of years to handle only narrow weather zones. Extreme temperatures would kill them within minutes, but the human didn't just survive. He worked in it. He laughed in it. Later that evening, the firestorm passed. The crew ventured out in full armor to repair the rest of the base. Mark joined them in light gear, wiping sweat with a towel. An alien scientist approached him with a scanner. Your body. It regulates temperature better than any species we've met. Mark shrugged. We don't have fancy shells or skin coatings, so we adapt. Sweat, muscle control, breathing tricks, it's all survival. The scientist nodded slowly. You were made for extremes. Mark looked around the cracked ground and the burnt sky. No, he said. We were made to overcome them. That night, Yeltar wrote another log entry. Day 3, the firestorm came, and death followed behind it. But the human did not hide. He walked into the storm and returned untouched. First the cold, now the heat. There is something ancient in him, something even time respects. I fear we are just now beginning to understand what humans truly are. They said nothing could survive the skies of Leron-9. The planet was covered in green clouds, always rumbling, always dripping. But it wasn't water that fell, it was acid. The kind that melted steel and burned through bones. The crew had no choice but to land. Their fuel cells were low. If they didn't stop here, they wouldn't make it to the next station. "Set down carefully," Captain Yeltar warned. "We must not be touched by the rain." As the ship lowered through the thick clouds, acid drops hit the windows and left hissing marks behind. The crew wore sealed suits. Every opening was double-checked. Outside, the base's sensor tower had stopped working. It had to be repaired, or they would be stranded here forever. Yeltar gathered the team. The tower must be fixed. But no one is going out there until the acid clears. Then Mark stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said. The crew turned. "Shocked. You can't," one shouted. "That rain is alive. It eats flesh." Mark held up a black, earth-made raincoat, thick, shiny, and plain. "This is acid-proof," he said. "Industrial-grade rubber. From a chemical plant on Earth. I've worn worse." "No," Yeltar growled. "I forbid it." But Mark was already walking to the door. Before anyone could stop him, the outer hatch opened. A sizzling sound filled the air. Rain poured like liquid fire. The aliens watched from inside. Breath held. Mark stepped out. Every drop hissed against his jacket, rolled off like water. Steam curled up around him, but he didn't stop. He walked to the broken tower, calmly pulled out a toolkit, and started working. The aliens watched in frozen silence. 10 minutes passed. 15. The rain didn't slow. The wind picked up. Acid splashed harder, but Mark didn't panic. He worked. With steady hands, face hidden behind a visor, fingers moving fast. Suddenly, click, the tower came alive. Blue lights blinked. The signal returned. Mark stood tall. Then, without hurrying, he walked back to the ship. The door slammed shut behind him. Steam poured from his coat. He took off the helmet, grinned, and said, "Fixed it." Yeltar walked up to him, eyes wide with shock. "Are you injured?" "Nope," Mark replied. The jacket held. An alien scientist scanned his body. No burns. No damage. "How did your kind create something that resists acid rain?" they asked. Mark gave a short laugh. "Because humans are stubborn. We made this stuff after factories started burning holes in the sky. The rain became poison, so we made armor." The room fell silent. Aliens from different worlds looked at him, not like an engineer, but like a legend. "We adapt," Mark said softly. "We suffer, learn, and build." Later that night, the acid storm still raged outside, lighting up the clouds with green flashes. But inside, the crew sat around Mark like children listening to a fire tale. He told them about Earth's past, about acid rain in ancient cities, about the ozone layer vanishing, about how humans destroyed their air and then slowly saved it. "You destroyed your skies and then fixed them?" Yeltar asked. Mark nodded. "Took decades, but yeah. We nearly died, then we got smart." The aliens didn't speak. What kind of species walks through acid? What kind of being survives it? Learns from IT and builds raincoats? That night, Yeltar wrote in his log again. Day 5. The acid sky tried to kill us. But the human walked through it like rain. He comes from a world that once poisoned itself, and yet he survives, stronger than before. This is not just biology. This is something deeper. This is will. The crew didn't plan to land on Kelis 5. The navigation system glitched. Fuel dropped. Then the engines failed. As the ship descended, the temperature outside dropped to -140 degrees. Even their sensors started freezing. Inside, the emergency lights blinked red. Power was fading fast. Captain Yeltar gave one simple order: survive. When the ship landed, it let out a long, slow groan. Ice formed over the hull instantly. The cold didn't just freeze air, it froze metal. "Life support is failing," said the medic. "Heat cells are dead." Everyone looked at each other, then looked at Mark. The human was already moving, while the aliens trembled, wrapping themselves in silver heat blankets. Mark tore open a storage bin and began gathering metal parts. "What are you doing?" "Yeltar," asked, his voice shaking. "Building a fire," Mark said, as if it was obvious. "In here, we have no fuel." Mark gave a small grin. "You'd be surprised what burns if you try hard enough." He found an old panel, cracked it open, and pulled wires coated in insulation. Then he tore the seat cushions apart. Inside was material that, when sparked, could burn long and slow. 10 minutes later, Mark had built a fire in a metal crate. Orange light filled the dark cabin. The aliens stared. They had never seen fire up close, only thermal devices. Real fire was rare on their homeworlds. Dangerous, wild, but here, it was life. Mark sat down close to it, then looked around. "You're all freezing," he said. "Come closer." "We can't," Yeltar said. "We'll burn." Mark pulled off his gloves. "No, you won't. Just trust the heat. It's old. It's kind." Slowly, the crew moved closer. Some dropped to the floor, shaking. One fainted. Mark reached out, pulled the weakest one toward him, and wrapped them in his arms. "You're burning hot," the alien whispered, dazed. "It's just body heat," Mark replied. "Another survival trick." He passed out warm cloths, took off his outer jacket, and placed it over the shivering pilot. His own skin turned red in the cold, but he didn't stop. He sat in the middle of the crew, arms around them, back straight, eyes fixed on the flickering flame. Hours passed. Outside, ice howled like a living thing. Inside, the fire held. So did Mark. By morning, the emergency beacon activated. Rescue was on the way. The aliens began to wake, no longer shaking. Their skin had color again. Their eyes slowly opened. The ship's walls were still covered in frost, but they were alive. Mark was still sitting upright, barely awake with frost in his eyebrows. The medic touched his face gently. "You gave us your heat," she said, her voice soft. "Why?" Mark blinked once. "Because I could." Captain Yeltar sat beside him and watched the last bits of fire burn down. "We fear fire," he said quietly. "We were taught it destroys." Mark smiled weakly. "Humans learned it saves." Yeltar stared into the ashes. "You risked your life for us." Mark shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time." No one said anything. There was a strange silence. Not from fear, but from respect. The crew had begun to see him not as a strange, warm-blooded outsider, but as the reason they were alive. Later, when the rescue team arrived and took the crew to safety, Yeltar stood in front of the frozen wreckage one last time. Then he opened his log and wrote, "Day 6, our hearts slowed. Our blood froze. Death came for us in silence. But one human lit a fire in the dark and gave us life. It was not the flame that saved us. It was his heart." The planet was beautiful, at first glance. Clear skies, green valleys, purple rivers that sparkled under 3 suns. The crew of the Serana stepped off the ramp carefully. Their scanners showed no storms, no acid, no freezing temperatures. But something was wrong, very wrong. The moment one of the alien crew took a breath, she collapsed, gasping, choking. Mark caught her before she hit the ground. "Back in the ship." "Now," Yeltar shouted. The crew scrambled. Inside, the medic sealed the doors and checked the fallen crewmate's vitals. Her lungs were burning. The air was toxic, but only to them. "She's stable," the medic said. "But we can't step out again without full air systems. This atmosphere reacts to our biology." Mark looked out the window. The valley still looked peaceful, like nothing had happened. He tightened his gloves. "I'll go." Yeltar turned sharply. "You don't know what's in that air." Mark pointed to the screen. "Oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide. This is Earth-like. 2 Me, this is fresh air." "You're guessing," the captain said. "No," Mark replied. "I'm breathing it now." He took off his helmet. The crew gasped. Mark took a deep breath, then another, then smiled. Feels like spring. No reaction, no coughing. His vitals stayed. Normal. The alien stared in disbelief. How can he survive this? Whispered the science officer. It burns our lungs. Mark zipped up his jacket and slung a repair kit over his shoulder. Guess I'm the only one who can fix the purifier, huh? He stepped out the door without a suit. The sky above glowed gold as wind whispered through alien trees. Mark walked through the strange valley with calm steps, while alien birds chirped. From purple trees, he stopped at the purifier station, kneeled beside the broken console, and began repairs. Inside the ship, the crew watched through cameras. Every breath Mark took should have killed him, but he smiled, hummed, even whistled. Once, "Is this a human superpower?" the medic asked. Yeltar shook his head slowly. "No, this is just Earth biology." 20 minutes later, Mark returned. The purifier buzzed to life behind him. "Clean air flowing again," he said. "You'll be able to breathe now. Just keep the masks on in case it mixes again." Yeltar didn't speak. Instead, he pulled up a hologram of Earth's early history: volcanic eruptions, deadly gases, smoke-filled skies. "You evolved through that?" Mark nodded. "Yeah, Earth tried to kill us every other day. Poison air, ash clouds, radiation, plagues. And you survived?" Mark looked him in the eye. "Not all of us, but the ones who did got stronger." Later that evening, when the alien who had collapsed finally opened her eyes, her first words were, "The human carried me through poison." Mark smiled. "Like I said, nothing I haven't breathed before." That night, Yeltar sat alone near the ship's window, looking out at the strange, deadly sky. He tapped his log again. Day 7. The air was poison. The sky, a trap. Our lungs failed. Our systems collapsed. But the human walked through it. Like a breeze, his planet shaped him through pain. And he calls it home. I now understand. It's not just resistance. It's history written in breath. No one had ever set foot on planet Varn is-12. Not because of war. Not because of wild beasts, but because of the blizzards. They moved like ghosts, silent, fast, and deadly. It was said that once the white storms began, even time itself stopped. The crew of the Serana was only meant to scan the planet from orbit. But when an energy signal blinked from the frozen surface, old tech, maybe a lost ship, orders changed. We land, Yeltar said. They touched down on a flat ice field, surrounded by jagged hills. It was calm. Too calm. The moment they stepped outside, the temperature dropped. Feels colder than the ice planet. One alien whispered. Mark scanned the sky and frowned. This place, it's quiet, not normal. A sharp sound cut through the silence. A warning tone on Mark's wrist device. He turned toward the north. The storm was coming. Fast. White clouds swallowed the horizon. Ice shards flew inside the wind like knives. Everyone back in the ship now. Yeltar yelled. They ran, but as the crew entered the ship, a heavy crunch echoed. The main energy cell stuck outside in a supply crate was frozen solid. We need that to lift off, said the engineer. Without it, we're dead. No one spoke. Then Mark stepped forward. I'll go. You can't, Yeltar said, already shaking from the cold. That storm will freeze you in seconds. I move fast, Mark said, and I've dealt with worse. He pulled on his Earth-made winter gear, thick boots, thermal mask, and glacier goggles. Then he walked out. Into the storm. The moment the door shut, the wind hit like a punch. Inside, the crew stared at the monitor. They could barely see anything, just white. Wind speed, 200 kilometers per hour. Temperature, minus 170 degrees Celsius. And dropping. Mark's figure disappeared into the storm. Minutes passed. Each second felt like a year. Ice hit the camera. Visibility dropped to 0. Then static. The feed went black. No signal, the tech shouted. He's gone. No, Yeltar said quietly. He's still moving. Inside the storm, Mark fought with every step. His breath froze instantly. His eyelashes turned white. But he kept moving. The crate was half buried. His gloves were too thick to grip the latch, so he tore it off with a metal rod. He wrapped the cell in thermal wrap, hugged it close, and turned back. The wind pushed him to the ground, but he got up. His boots slid on the ice, but he kept going. Back in the ship, the air was cold. Hope was colder. Then knock, knock, knock. A soft sound. The door. Yeltar ran. He opened the hatch and Mark fell in, covered in snow and ice. But the energy cell was clutched tightly in his arms. "I told you," Mark said, breathless. Move fast." The crew cheered. The heat systems roared back to life. Lights came on. The engines hummed again, but Mark sat still, shaking slightly. "You almost froze to death," the medic said, wrapping him in blankets. "I've been close before," Mark replied, voice hoarse. "Once I got stuck in a whiteout in Alaska. Couldn't see my own hands. This was worse." Yeltar sat beside him, quiet. "You fought the storm," he said. "No," Mark replied. "I outlasted it." That night, after the storm passed and the skies cleared, the crew stood in silence watching the stars reflect off the ice. Mark leaned against the hull, drinking something warm. Yeltar opened his log again. Day 8, the blizzard came like a monster. It tried to stop everything. Time, life, hope. But one human walked through it, carrying warmth in his arms. He didn't just survive the cold. He defied it. The crew of the Serana had seen many planets. They had walked on glass deserts, crossed rivers of ash, and survived storms that froze the blood. But this time, they stood in a quiet field, safe, green, peaceful. The mission was done. They had made it. Repairs were complete, supplies refilled. Departure time, 0900 hours. But no one spoke. They sat together inside the ship, watching the human. Mark stood outside, facing the twin suns, arms crossed. He looked relaxed, but something in his stillness made the aliens uneasy. Captain Yeltar looked at his crew warriors. Pilots, scientists, all trained, all strong, yet none of them could forget what they'd seen. He had walked through ice storms, breathed poisoned air, worked inside fire, survived acid rain, and endured things that should have killed any living being. Not once did Mark cry out. Not once did he break. The fear they now felt wasn't the kind that made you run. It was the kind that made you respect. "We thought weather was our enemy," Yeltar said, breaking the silence. "But the human treats it like an old friend." One young alien whispered, "Do all humans survive like this?" "No," Mark said, stepping back inside. "Most would have died. But that's the thing about us." Everyone turned. "We come from a world that tried to wipe us out. Again and again. Volcanoes, floods, ice ages, fires. And we kept going. Not because we're the strongest, but because we don't stop." The crew fell silent. "Fear?" Mark said softly. "That's normal. But we learned something else too." He looked at each of them. "Pain can shape you. Cold can teach you. Heat can break you but also harden you. And once you've lived through it all, you stop fearing it." Yeltar nodded slowly, and then for the first time in his life, he felt something he'd never felt before. Not fear of death, but fear of the human spirit. That night, the stars above, the planet glowed brighter than usual. The crew gathered for one last moment before departure. The ship was ready. Engines warmed. But Yeltar couldn't leave without finishing his final log entry. Day 10. "We feared the weather, we feared the storm. But in the end, we feared him. Not because he threatened us, not because he raised his voice, but because he didn't break. The human walked through all things we ran from. And when we asked him why, he simply said, 'This is what we do. Today we leave this world. But we carry a new truth with us. The greatest force in the galaxy is not fire, not ice, not poison. It is the will of a human who refuses to fall. The Serana rose slowly into the sky, leaving behind one more planet and one unforgettable lesson.